The reservation had been made 6 weeks in advance. That was the detail James Whitfield kept returning to, long after the evening was over. Not the maitre d's tone, not the careful way Dr. Vivienne Ashford had spelled her name the second time, not even the moment the room went quiet and turned. It was the 6 weeks, as if the Ashfords had known, even before they arrived, that they would need every piece of paper in order. James had been coming to Delacroix for 8 years. He knew the corner table by the window the way he knew his own handwriting. He knew Colin Strasser's practiced glide across the parquet, the measured pause before the podium, the way the man's chin lifted slightly when he was about to solve a problem that wasn't a problem at all. James had always filed that chin lift away as professionalism. He understood, watching from table 11 that Saturday in October, that he had been wrong about what to call it. The Ashfords arrived at 7:15, Gerald in a dark wool blazer, Vivienne in a charcoal dress with a single strand of pearls. They moved with the unhurried ease of people who had nothing to prove and knew it. Vivienne set her small evening bag on the podium ledge and gave her name with the light clarity of someone who had addressed courtrooms for 30 years. Colin Strasser looked at the reservation book. He looked at his screen. He looked at the book again. "I'm not finding it," he said. "Not sorry, not puzzled, flat." "Ashford," Vivienne said. "Vivienne Ashford. SHFORD. The confirmation came through on a Tuesday." "I understand," Strasser said, in a tone that made clear he did not consider understanding to be his present obligation. "The dining room is at capacity this evening. If you'd like to wait at the bar, we can see what opens up." Gerald's hand found the small of Vivienne's back. "Not urgent, just present." "We have a confirmed reservation," Vivienne said. Her voice had not changed. "A confirmation number if that's helpful." "You're welcome to show me," Strasser said, "but our system is what governs." Behind them, a party of 4 arrived, 2 couples, white, mid-50s, laughing at something one of the women had said on the sidewalk. Strasser's expression shifted in a way that required no translation. He reached for 2 menus. "Right this way," he said to them, and led them into the dining room without another word to the Ashfords. James set down his wine glass. He told himself for approximately 4 seconds that it was none of his business, that there might be an explanation, that he was a retired man at his corner table and the evening was going fine. He had been telling himself versions of this for 8 years, in restaurants and lobbies and airport lines, and he had always believed, in a comfortable and unexamined way, that the telling was the same as the truth. He stood up. The dining room of Delacroix held perhaps 60 covers on a Saturday. It was not a loud room. It was the kind of room where sound moved softly across white linen and candlelight, where conversations were private things. When James stood, 2 tables near him noticed, because James Whitfield did not stand up in the middle of dinner without reason. The sommelier, halfway through a pour at table 7, paused. James walked to the entrance. "Colin," he said. Strasser turned. His expression was neutral in the careful way of a man who has learned to make neutrality into a wall. "Mr. Whitfield," he said, "I'll be right with you." "I'm not waiting to be helped," James said. "I'm asking about this reservation." He looked at Vivienne. "Dr. Ashford, I apologize for not coming sooner." Vivienne regarded him for a moment, a look James would later describe to his daughter as the look of a woman deciding whether a person is worth the investment of her trust. Whatever she found in his face, she gave him a single nod. "The confirmation number is in my phone," she said to Strasser without heat. "I'm glad to read it to you." Strasser's jaw tightened at its hinge. "As I explained." "You explained that the dining room is at capacity," James said. "The party you just seated came in after the Ashfords. I watched you seat them. So either the dining room went from capacity to available in the 90 seconds between their arrival and the Ashfords, or something else is happening here, and I'd like to understand which." The room had gone quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when they are listening without wanting to appear to be listening. Forks rested. Conversations found natural endings that were not their real endings. A woman at table 4, James did not know her name, only that she came in on Friday evenings and always ordered the duck, set her napkin on the table, and turned her chair a quarter turn toward the entrance. Vivienne read the confirmation number from her phone. Her voice was steady, and she did not rush the digits, and she did not lower her eyes while she read them. Strasser said nothing for a moment, then he typed. The silence that followed was approximately 8 seconds. James counted. "I see it," Strasser said, and there was something collapsed in his voice, like a wall that had been built too quickly. "Wonderful," Vivienne said. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. Gerald Ashford touched James's arm. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I should have come sooner," James said, and he meant it as a fact and not a performance, and Gerald seemed to understand that. The owner of Delacroix, a compact Frenchwoman named Elise Beaumont, had been in the kitchen during the exchange. She came through the pass-through door 2 minutes later because her floor manager had sent her a text consisting of 3 words. She crossed the dining room with the particular speed of someone who has run a restaurant for 22 years and knows that 2 minutes is already too long. She looked at the podium. She looked at Strasser. She looked at Vivienne Ashford, composed at the entrance to her own dining room, and something in Elise Beaumont's face rearranged itself with great finality. "Dr. Ashford," she said, "I am deeply sorry." "Thank you," Vivienne said. "I'd like to be seated." "Of course." Elise turned to the dining room and spoke to it as if the room itself needed to understand. "Please forgive us for any delay." Then, to Strasser, "Go to the office. I'll be there shortly." What Elise Beaumont did not know at the podium, what the room did not know, what James had not known when he stood up, was that Dr. Vivienne Ashford, retired circuit court judge, served as the chair of the Aldercroft Community Foundation. The foundation had funded Delacroix's community table program for 3 consecutive years. The current disbursement cycle, carrying a grant of $180,000 designated for subsidized family dining nights and culinary apprenticeship stipends, was set for renewal in 11 days. Vivienne had not mentioned this at the podium. She had not mentioned it when Strasser dismissed her confirmation number, or when the other party was seated ahead of them, or when she waited with Gerald's hand at the small of her back. She had given her name and her confirmation number and one quiet question about the verification procedure, and she had stood where the entrance hall could see her, and she had not moved. James learned about the foundation the following morning, when a colleague forwarded him a brief item from a local arts and culture newsletter. He read it twice, sitting at his kitchen table with his coffee going cold, and felt the particular weight of understanding arriving after the fact. He had stood up because it was right, not because of the Aldercroft Foundation. He wanted to be clear about that in the accounting he kept for himself, but he also understood that the accounting didn't change what happened next. Elise Beaumont called the foundation's executive director at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. The conversation was brief and professional and left no ambiguity. The $180,000 disbursement was placed under formal review pending the completion of an internal inquiry into the events of Saturday evening. The inquiry would be conducted by an independent reviewer and would include a full examination of Delacroix's front-of-house seating practices over the preceding 18 months. Colin Strasser was relieved of his duties that Sunday. The restaurant's written statement, issued to the foundation and distributed to staff the following week, acknowledged that a confirmed reservation had been incorrectly handled and that a discriminatory pattern in front-of-house practices had been identified and would not be permitted to continue. A new seating protocol was implemented immediately. Every reservation confirmed in the system before a party is asked to wait. No discretionary holds. A log maintained and available to the owner at the end of every service. Elise Beaumont issued a written apology to the Ashfords personally on Delacroix stationery in her own hand. She asked if they would return. Vivienne, according to Gerald, read the letter at the kitchen table, folded it with care, and said that she would think about it. He said she was still thinking. At table 11, in the hour after the Ashfords were seated, James Whitfield ate the rest of his dinner. He wasn't sure he tasted much of it. He was thinking about the 4 seconds he had spent deciding, and about the 8 years before them, and about the gap between the two. The distance a person could spend an entire comfortable life pretending wasn't there. The woman from table 4, the one who ordered the duck, stopped beside him on her way out. He didn't know her name and he didn't ask. "Good for you," she said. He shook his head. "Should have been faster," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "Then be faster next time," she said, and walked out into the October evening. Across the dining room, at a table by the far window, Dr. Vivienne Ashford and Gerald were finishing their meal. James could not hear what they were saying. He could see that Vivienne was laughing at something Gerald had said, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind that belongs only to people who are wholly at ease with each other. Gerald reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The dining room moved around them, the sound of silver, the low music, the unhurried drift of a Saturday evening finding its proper weight. The Ashfords sat in it as if they belonged there completely, which they did, and always had, and which no amount of practiced neutrality at a podium had ever actually changed. James left a larger tip than usual, which he knew was not the point, and walked out into the cool air and stood for a moment on the sidewalk before hailing a cab. He thought about the 6 weeks. He thought about the confirmation number read aloud without trembling. He thought about a woman who had stood at the entrance to a room she was entitled to enter and had not moved, had not raised her voice, had not given the moment anything it didn't deserve, and who had walked to her table, eventually, with the unhurried ease of someone who had nothing to prove and had always known it. He got in the cab. He had a call to make in the morning to the Bar Association's pro bono committee, where a seat had been open for 2 years and where he had been meaning to get around to it. He had been meaning to get around to a number of things. He would start in the morning,